Susan, the Vice President of Polk County Women Mean Business. I am going to touch on a couple things before I introduce our speaker. How many members here are going to be or have been vendors in the vendor market? Raise your hand. Okay, we have one spot left in July. First pay, first come. We're booked for June. We only have about 6 spots left for August, and we have 2 floors secured. So come to us when you make a decision. COhatch. This project, this dream of ours, I'd say it was a lifelong dream, but it was about 10 minutes. It was like, oh my gosh, I passed a U-Haul, I sent her the picture. She already had the concept, but within 2 weeks, we decided on the mobile trailer. Within 2 hours, we found the funding. Thank you, ladies. We could not do it without you. Let's see, those two. Okay, I own Nana Lulu's Cookies. Most of you know I've taken a pause, which means I'm never going to go back to it. I did bake for today. Don't worry, there's no drywall in my house today, but that will probably have slowed down some things, but I had to for my aunt here. Vice President, you guys know that. I'm going to talk more just quickly. When I grew up with my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was the best stay-at-home mom anybody could have. I had her brother, my uncle, was married to Susan Garcia. But I never knew life without Aunt Sue. So she was just as much my aunt as he was my uncle. They did not have children, but they had nieces and nephews that were their children. She has always been inspirational. She has always encouraged me, both of them encouraged me to take chances. I'll always remember them saying, take chances. I spent a week with my uncle a few years ago, and he is the one who said, why haven't you started a business? And I went home and started Nana Lulu's Cookies. I'm not gonna lie, I've always been jealous of Aunt Sue's closet, which is why there's construction going on in my house, because my old office is now my new closet, which, don't worry, well, I'll take care of the confidence closet. So I'm gonna let her tell you all about her. I know that my mom and my uncle are watching us. We have faith, because I would have loved to have thought of this before they both passed, but they're watching us and they're proud as heck of us. And my baby sister coming to join and watch Aunt Sue speak, because she's been excited that she was coming to visit. So Susan Garcia, Aunt Sue, come on. So sweet.
It's going to make me cry, so I hope I can get through this. Yeah. Do I need to move this, or?
Oh, Jessica.
Is it a speaker, or is it?
Jessica, a microphone?
Is it a microphone?
On the podium? Yep. Okay.
Oh, okay, so just leave it there? Okay, all right. I am going to follow along on some notes just because I want to keep on time and make sure that I honor that with you. But first of all, let me start by saying I really miss this. I retired about 3 years ago from being an entrepreneur, and I'll tell you a lot more about all of that. But I just love the energy. I love talking to each of you, finding out about your business. It always amazes me what businesses people have and how they start them and how they think about them. So back in March, Luana asked me if I would consider speaking at this group. And I immediately said yes, and then I had to begin to think about, well, what do I talk about? Do I talk about business, how to start a business planning? And I talked to Luana about it, and she suggested that I tell you my story. And so I'm a little nervous about how do you fit this lifetime in 30 minutes, but I'm going to give it a try this morning. It was interesting because shortly after she asked me, I had attended an event. It was a dinner event one night, and I sat next to a man whose name was George Hamilton. not the tanned actor that, those are of us old enough to know who George Hamilton is. But he he's the retired CEO of a major Dow chemical division. And I had shared with him that Luana had asked me to speak, and I was excited, but also a little apprehensive. I don't know what to talk about. I'm not quite sure. I hadn't put my thoughts together yet. And so we sat there over dinner, and he started asking me questions. And then he asked me another question about myself and another question about myself. And finally, he looked at me and he said, "That's your speech. You've just given it. Tell them about your story. Tell them about all the times that you never let anybody make decisions about anything except yourself. You made those decisions." So let me try to share some of those stories with you. And I'm going to start with the first time I remember never letting someone tell me no. And it was in high school. And for some unknown reason, I was a junior in high school, and I wanted to be the class mascot. I don't know why. I just thought it would be a fun thing to do. So I made an appointment with our principal, Mr. Connie. I went into his office and I stood in front of his desk, and he said, "Well, what can I do for you, Susan?" And I said, "I'd like to be the mascot." And he said, "You can't be the mascot." And I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Because only boys are the mascots." And I said, "Well, but I'm tall enough. I'm going to fit in the uniform." And he said, "Well, that doesn't matter. You can't be the mascot. Women are not mascots." And I stood there and said, "That's unacceptable." And he looked at me and said, all right, you can be the mascot, and I'll just get out of my office and go back to class." So I did. My senior year, I was the class mascot. The second time I remember something significant where I kind of said no was in college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I wanted to be a chemistry major. And in order to do that, you had to take Chem 1 and Chem 2. And they were large classes, classrooms, and there were about 200 people in each of the classrooms in Chem 1. And there were 3 of us in that classroom that were women, myself, and 2 other women who wanted to be nurses. And you have to be a nurse, you had to take Chem 1 and Chem 2. Well, at the end of the semester, I got a C. The other 2 women got Fs. Well, I was devastated. I'd never received a C before in my life, and I just was beside myself, talked to my parents about it, and they said, "Well, you can still take Chem 2. So take Chem 2 and see how you do. Study really hard." So I took Chem 2, and I got a D. Well, I was overwhelmed. I went to my counselor at the time, and I told him, "What do I do? Do I go to summer school? Do I take it over again? What do I do?" And he said, "Look, you change your major. You can graduate with a D in chemistry as long as you change your major, and then that way you can graduate." He said, "Because the head of the chemistry department said he does not want women in his program. He'll just flunk you again." So I changed majors, and I did graduate with a degree in liberal arts. So several years later, I ended up working for a company called M&M Mars, the candy company. It was like the best job I've ever had in my life. I was in sales, in the sales division, and they wanted to hire more sales reps, and they wanted to start doing college recruiting. They hadn't done any yet. So they asked me if I would help college recruit, and I said yes, and they wanted to go to Pitt, so I said, of course, I want to go to Pitt, and I'm going to interview there. So I sent boxes of candies ahead of time, so when I arrived on campus at the placement office, they said, "The candy lady's here." All right, so the head of the career counseling department always likes to meet who's going to be on campus and who's interviewing. And I looked at him, and lo and behold, it was the young man who told me I should change my major because women don't belong in the chemistry department. And I thought, I got to tell him my story. So we sat down, we chatted a little bit, and I said, I need to tell you that when I was here in campus and I told him my story, that this young man in the counseling department told me that I could just change my major and move on and graduate. And I thought he had seen a ghost. He recognized the story, he remembered the story that he told me, and I looked at him and I smiled and I said, don't worry about it. I have had a great business career so far. I've done really, really well. I love my jobs. What I said, if I knew then what I know now, I would probably own this university. And I said, it's a joke, but he said he was so embarrassed and he apologized and apologized. So on with my story. So when I graduated from college, I went to work at Gimbel's, and early on I met my husband through networking, through a couple of different groups and organizations. My husband, John Garcia, Luana told you about him, we were married for 48 years. He was my friend, he was my lover, and he was my business partner. And let me tell you, it's never easy working with your spouse as a business partner. And I know, I've met some women this morning who work with their husbands, and yeah, we all know what that is. Well, we started our first business together after working in corporate America. Both of us were in human resources, and I did some operational things, and I worked in the retail business. But after many years, both of us started a business, and probably for all the wrong reasons. I started a business not because I had a great vision or because I had an aha moment and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I did it to save our marriage. So after many years of us working together in corporate America, John was with Westinghouse at the time, and Westinghouse is headquartered in Pittsburgh. He became really experienced in managing union campaigns. So much so that every time Westinghouse had a site or a plant or a location that got into trouble, they asked John to move, go there, do his thing, if you will, and make sure that the facility didn't become unionized. Well, we ended up moving 11 times in our first 8 years of marriage. And I agreed to move with him because at that point in my life, I kind of saw myself as this little Italian housewife, and isn't that what we were supposed to do, right? So, but I moved with him all that time, and I always found another job. I always was able to interview and convince someone that they should bring me on board, and we lived in a lot of different locations, and I loved, and I made it work everywhere where we lived. And I realized I was learning new skills because I didn't know a stranger. I learned to talk to anybody about anything and convince them to hire me and come on board. So at another point in our career, John was asked to come back to Pittsburgh. We had left, and I'll talk about that in a minute. He wanted to be on the corporate staff. They asked him to come on the corporate staff because he had gained such great knowledge, and I was back home. I was in Pittsburgh. But Westinghouse at that point began a really rapid, long financial slide. They were not doing well, and his boss said to him, you know, I don't know that I can keep you on the corporate staff anymore, but I have a great senior opportunity for you in Manhattan. So John took a great job in Manhattan. I had just joined a company called Zaire Corporation in Pittsburgh. I was not going to leave. And so we decided at that point that we would commute. And then Zaire Corporation asked me to take a senior level management job. I would be the first woman at that level in the organization. They asked me to take the job, and I really, really wanted it because it moved me out of human resources, it moved me into operations, it gave me a background that I'd never had before, but it was in Boston. So now I'm in Boston, John's in New York, and we commuted for 4.5 years. Over time, I began to realize that we would end up being divorced. Not because we didn't love each other, but because for 4.5 years we lived apart. He had his life in New York, he had his friends, his colleagues, they would go out drinking, they would go to dinners, and the same thing with me. I was in Boston, I had my friends, and we were just kind of growing apart. So it was my Friday to be in Manhattan, we had dinner. I sat and I looked at him and I said, you know, John, if we keep doing this, we're going to end up getting divorced, and is that what we want? And he immediately said no. I was really scared, quite honestly, because if he said yes, then I would have to think about it, and we would have separated. But we both said no. We both said no. We're going to work really, really hard and try to figure out what it is that we're going to do. So for a lot of personal reasons, I decided to quit my job in Boston. I moved to New York, and the two of us worked really, really hard on trying to decide, what do we do next? How do we keep the marriage together? How do we both work and have careers? How do we both stay in the same city and even have control over our lives? It was a lot to process and a lot to talk about. So shortly after I quit my job, I moved to New York. Westinghouse decided to sell the division he was with. So now both of us are out of work. And you talk about being afraid, talk about what do we do next, resentment. I was so angry at Westinghouse. John kept saying, you can't be angry at a company. I said, oh yes, I can. I'm angry. I hate this. I've moved so often for you. They have no idea what they're doing. We just keep moving around. We have no control over our lives. And that's where we were at that point. So after many weeks of what do we do? What are the pros and cons of what do we do next? How do we do it? We narrowed it down to 3 things. Number one, we could stay in New York City and find jobs. But they better be good jobs, because living in Manhattan is really, really expensive. The second option was to go back to my home, Pittsburgh, and find jobs there. And that's not something, interestingly, I wanted to do, because I didn't like the weather in Pittsburgh. We had lived in the South, and we had lived in Charlotte, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And the third option was to move to Charlotte. We both had enjoyed it there. I was there for a short period of time, and we could move to Charlotte and find jobs. But we both knew we needed to have control over our own lives. We both knew that we were tired of relocating, and so during this evaluation process, you know, what do I do next? What do we both do? I met a former boss. I networked to a former boss who was now a senior executive in New York at a bank. And he said, let me introduce you to the CEO of an outplacement firm. And I don't know how many of you know what outplacement is, but it's a career management service where companies hired us to help people who were laid off or who were fired. And we helped them go through the creative process to figure out what do they do next. So there was an outplacement firm that was headquartered in Philadelphia. It was starting up. It was trying to expand rapidly, but they didn't have the money, but they wanted to open offices in the Carolinas. And so we decided that that's what we would do. We would be those people who started a business in Charlotte for them, and hopefully that would give us control over our lives. We'd never had a business before, but this is the way we thought it might work. So we moved to Charlotte. We took all of our retirement money, put it into the business. Many of you might, this may sound familiar to you. We opened an office in Charlotte, and I hired a secretary, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, I got to make payroll. You know, what do we do? I had never sold anything before. I had never run a business. I mean, I've been in business, but it was always corporate America. It was somebody else's business. And it became very clear early on that I was the one that was going to have to do the selling and drive the business, because my husband very quickly realized he couldn't do it. He didn't want to do it. He hated it. And so I would be the one that would have to sell and drive the business. He was really good at doing career counseling. He really was outstanding. He loved working with executives, helping them be creative to figure out ways to move on with their lives. And you know, when you have a business, it's easy to sell when you know the service you are delivering or the product that you're delivering is outstanding. And he was outstanding. He was really, really good at it. So it just made it so easy for me to sit in front of a CEO of a company and say, this is why you need to hire us. This is why we can help you. So it was our business. We were doing it together. Our staff, sometimes we're confused about what roles we had, and so we clarified it. I would be sales, he would be internal operations, and if anybody had questions about each, we would never answer questions for him, and he would never answer questions for me. And it really helped keep the business clear, our staff clear. They knew what to do, when to do it. And we honored that structure. The other thing that we did is, probably all of you know, businesses can be 24/7. I mean, it's every day. I mean, and that's what John and I would talk about all the time. But we promised ourselves on Friday night over dinner we would never talk about business. And I can't tell you how many times they went, no, 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 don't say that, don't say that. Although sometimes I worried we didn't have anything else to talk about other than business. But, you know, we honored that on Friday night. But I will tell you at this point, so the business is getting started. We're trying to grow a business. I've got to make payroll. And frankly, I was really afraid. I had never sold. I didn't know how to sell. But I saw an ad in the New York Times for a sales seminar in Manhattan. And I decided to invest the money in myself, go to New York and go to this seminar. And I will tell you that it changed my life. When I went into the seminar, the first thing the leader said was, and this is going to resonate with a lot of you because I've heard it just chatting with you this morning, stop selling and start helping. Wow. Because up to this point, my only vision of myself as a salesperson was as a used car salesman. Oh my gosh, I did not want to be seen as a used car salesman, but I had no other example, no other idea. So for me, that became my sales mantra. That changed my life in terms of going on sales calls. Number one, I was prepare myself for the call, learn as much about the business as I could, about the CEO, who I was calling on and why. The second thing was I had to really discipline myself and learn to go in and ask questions and listen. I'm an extrovert. That's really hard for me to do sometimes, but it became easy because I realized when I asked the right questions and I listened to them, I learned if they had needs. And if they had needs, I could help them. I would make the sale. If they didn't have the need for my service, then I would move on to the next company. I would thank them and try to find another company and do the same thing over and over and over again. And hence, now, 11 years later, we opened 7 offices in North and South Carolina. The business was doing really well, and we ended up selling it back to the company in Philadelphia that had asked if we would open an office for them. So now we became part of their organization, and the sales contract was an agreement that I would stay with the business for 3 years. At that point, after 11 years, I was the face of the business. I mean, people knew me. I networked in the community. I belonged to the chamber. I belonged to Rotary. I did all the things that you all are doing here and that you need to do and want to do and hopefully enjoy doing it, because quite frankly, it really is fun, it's inspiring, and we all need it. So as I said, that experience after I sold the business, I really looked back on it and said, you know, what did I learn? And I learned a lot because it really changed my life. The thing I realized when I learned to sell, when I learned to help people, and I learned to network, I learned that I could always earn a living. I was no longer afraid that a company would lay me off, or that I would lose my job, or the business became really, really hard. But anyway, I ended up, so I was in Charlotte, we'd sold the business, trying to figure out what to do next, and through networking, I met a man who owned several temporary staffing agencies, companies around the country. He had one in Pittsburgh that was struggling and having financial problems. And he said to me, Susan, I remember you lived in Pittsburgh. Would you help me out and take over running this company in Pittsburgh and turn it around for me? So I thought, yeah, this would be a great opportunity using my skills of building a business. Let's see if I can do this. So I went to Pittsburgh. I made a lot of very tough decisions and changes because I had to eliminate some staff that had been there a long time, but they weren't the right people to help drive the business. We put together business plans. We got new customers. We turned the business around in a couple of years, and it was doing well financially. It was on track. And I even identified my replacement. I had a young man that I had hired to run one of the offices for me, and he was just super. And he would replace me, and so now it was time for me to move south again. I really wanted to move on and do something else. I was getting older, getting closer to retirement, and my husband, John, at that point had developed Parkinson's disease. But I made a deliberate decision that I had to keep working in spite of that. He had retired, and we needed me to keep working. Number one, we had to keep putting money into our retirement fund. I mean, you know, we had used it all to be able to start this business. But I also loved to work, and I needed to work as a respite for me, because I needed time away from John. I was his full-time caregiver at that point, but I couldn't do that. And so I knew I needed to get a caregiver, which I did, and I kept working. So what next? We all go through this. What next? Well, the one thing I knew at this point in my life that I needed was to learn more about technology. Unlike many of you here, I didn't grow up with technology. It's not second nature to me, but I knew if I needed to keep working, I needed to, again, learn some skills, and that would be about technology. So how do I do that? Well, I networked to a small company. It was a startup company, had been around for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 years. It was a small software development business in Charleston, South Carolina. It had just been purchased by a New York investment firm, and they brought in a CEO to help drive the company and take it public. But they needed somebody in their organization to help them build a staffing infrastructure. And I realized one of the skills I was learning is how to build a business and how to do staffing. I was in human resources, and I used all those skills, put it together, and it was cute. I digress for a minute, because he sat there and he said, why should I hire you? You know nothing about technology. And I said, you're right, but I'm smart, I can learn quickly, and I can teach your technical people how to sell to regular people without using technical terms. He said, when would you like to start, and how much would you like to make? And so I joined it. A couple of years later, I helped build a staffing infrastructure, helped them to drive the business. If you've ever worked for or been around a company that's owned by an investment firm, all they want to do is grow the business, make money, and cut expenses. That's all they want to do. They're going to take the company public, and then they sell it and get out. It's a tough environment to work in, but it was great experience, and I helped them pull all of that together. But I had done what they asked me to do, and so that was finished, and I'm working for the company, and my boss at the time said, we'd like you to run the sales software accounting division. So I had a team of young technical salespeople, and they were great. We made all of our goals. We exceeded our goals in the first year, and it was wonderful. But I realized I didn't want to work for somebody anymore. I didn't want to just be an employee. I think I'd gotten too old and too stubborn and too, I want to do it my way. And, sometimes they won't listen, sometimes they will. But so I decided to resign, but I still wanted to work. My husband's Parkinson's disease was developing rapidly, and I didn't want to be a full-time caregiver. I couldn't be. I needed to work. I loved to work. So I decided, people who know me laugh at this, I wanted to use some of my early on retail skills. I wanted to use my entrepreneurial skills, and I wanted to start another business. And how could I pull all of those together? I looked at clothing shops, I looked at jewelry stores, I looked at a whole variety of things, but I came upon an ad for a UPS store franchise. And people go, what? A UPS store franchise? I bought the business. It turned out to be a fun business. It satisfied my retail needs. Customers came in every day. I get such energy from customers. Talking to them, how can I help them? And you may say, well, how hard is that to do? They come in, they ship. Well, it's not so easy. It's expensive. Yeah, you need to ship all these things to your grandchildren in California, but it's going to cost you this much. Well, how can we make this work for you? Turned out to be a great business. I actually still own the business. I've owned it for 11 years, but I sold it 3 years ago to a young couple, a husband and wife, who wanted to buy the business. But as many of you may realize, banks don't lend money to small retail businesses. They don't like to do that. And so I lent them the money. We put together a loan package, and they write me a check every month. And the business is doing well. I stay in touch with them. They're doing a great job. And I still have several more years under that contract, and when the contract is satisfied, then the business will be theirs. What's nice about it is it supplements my retirement. Quite honestly, I was 72 when I decided to sell the business. I was no young chickie, but it really was, it's a wonderful thing to be able to get some money in. And isn't that why all of us work ultimately, maybe? When we retire, we'll have enough money that we can finally enjoy and relax and figure out what it is that we want to do. I want to stop here for a minute because I want to back up and tell you one story that I think is important for this group also. I think I told you that when I met John, he was with Westinghouse. We were in Pittsburgh. And Westinghouse, almost immediately after we were married, moved them back to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'd never lived anywhere else. I lived in Pittsburgh my whole life, and so here I am in Charlotte. And because of his friendships and people that he'd known, he'd lived there before, he introduced me to a lot of people. I interviewed, and I got hired at a bank called First Union Bank, which is now Wells Fargo. It was bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold, so it's Wells Fargo. I loved the job that I had. I loved the staff that I had. It was a very creative environment, and but I still was missing something. I felt, I don't know, just isolated, alone, and I was trying to figure out why. Did I miss my family? I did, but it really wasn't that. But I remembered that when I was in Pittsburgh, I belonged to a professional women's organization, and I missed that, and so I started a group called Women Executives in Charlotte. It is now over 40 years, very active, over 250 of some of the most influential women in Charlotte, including the mayor of Charlotte. So I'm really, really proud of that, but it was one of those things that What do you mean you're going to do what? What? This was in the 70s. Yes, I'm going to start this group, and everybody kind of made fun of it. I mean, it was the women's lib time, and but I did it anyway. I share that story and kind of all my background. I want to summarize it because, working in corporate America, if any of you have done that, you sometimes feel like you don't have control over your life. But having a business is 24/7. I mean, it's constant. And you're the one that has to be there. You have to make the decisions. You have to drive the business. Both things require a lot of different energy in a lot of different directions. But I wanted to share with you, in looking back over a lifetime, some of the things that I learned. Number one, networking, doing what you're doing here. It is so critical, meeting people and helping them achieve their goals and expanding your network, because you never know what opportunities will come about it. I went to Pittsburgh and ran an Allegheny Services temporary agency. I mean, it was just through networking and meeting people and expanding that network and helping them. And hopefully, if you need some help, you know who to draw on, to go to talk to, and maybe they can help you also. The second thing is selling, or as I call it, helping. It's absolutely required to build a business. You just have to do that. And networking, the process of networking is very similar to selling. It's helping people, asking questions, listening, and seeing if you can help them. Part of selling, if you will, and building a business also is outstanding customer service and delivering quality products or services. Got to have those things as well as selling. Those things go hand in hand. The third thing, and most importantly, is focused hard work. Being your own boss, as I said, is really tough. It takes a lot of energy. You've got to make all the decisions. You have to drive that business every day. So you must be there. And if you think you can do this part-time and make a lot of money, I don't think that will work. You can do businesses part-time, but it's the trade-off. And I've heard many of you know, you have families, you want a business, you want to work, you need to make money, you need to juggle all those balls. But if you can keep yourself focused and move forward with that, you'll have a lot of success. And the other thing is keep doing what you're doing in spite of the fact that people may say to you, what are you doing? It's not normal. It's not practical. What are you doing? It can't be done. Some of you may have heard a lot of that, but listen to your inner self. You'll know whether your business is doing well. Keep track of your business plans, your finances, your goals. Keep track of those all the time, day in and day out. And you will know whether to keep the business, to close it down, to sell it. Those are decisions that you have to make. And those are really very difficult decisions. Number 4, and for me this was really important, is to take time for yourself. Be healthy. You have to stay healthy mentally and physically, because it takes a lot to keep your business going and to do what you're doing every day. You all know that. I walk. I love to walk. I do all kinds of exercises too. I love being outside and whatever. But I've walked my whole life, and it's because it gives me time to think. It gives me time to plan. It gives me time to sometimes just breathe. My husband had Parkinson's for 22 years. I was driving a business. I was running the house. I was taking care of the caregivers. I was making sure that he was okay. it was my time for myself. And we all need that. And it helped me stay healthy mentally and physically because it's great exercise. So you all need to find something to do, whether it's a hobby, whether it's exercise, whatever it may be. Don't be afraid to put that on your calendar even. I mean, you need that time for yourself. And the last thing I want to share with you is don't dwell on the past. I was chatting with someone here about just that. You can't worry about the past. I mean, it's gone, but also don't be afraid to make mistakes or to fail. That's actually how we learn. We learn from our failures. Don't be embarrassed by it. Don't dwell on it. Move on in your life, and just move forward that way, personally and professionally. So, in the face of people saying to you, "No, you can't do it because only men are mascots," look everybody in the eye and say, "That's not acceptable. I can do it." So, anyway, thank you. I hope it didn't go too long.
I don't care.
It was fun. It was
I don't
fun.
care if it was too long.
I'm sorry. It was
Because
fun.
of you, I own half the company.
I'll be
I took
happy.
a chance.
Yeah.
Another one for Aunt Sue.
I'll be happy to stay and answer any questions or just chat with anybody. It's been so fun chatting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Jessica, do you want to close with anything?
I will close, and you will.
The amazing Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Love you, Aunt Sue.
Thank you for sharing your remarkable career and how you got to where you are. I found it inspiring, and I hope you did too. We are meeting for a members-only pool party in 2 weeks at Lou's house, 10 to 2. And then we are having a game night, July 6th. We just haven't finalized the details.
No.
It'll be here, right?
It's going to be here.
Upstairs?
July's here. Yes.
Yep. July.
August is at Smith's.
Yep.
Bingo night.
So July 6th, game night. July 2nd, pool party. It'd be very casual. If you don't want to get in the pool, just come. It's going to be so
No,
fun.
You have to go in the pool.
You have to get in the pool.
I'm getting in the pool.
And then our market is this Saturday. Our group hosts an indoor market here every third Saturday. This is the Saturday. It's going to be a huge, fun time. Pride in the Park is going on, so be careful with parking. You're going to have to probably park on the outskirts. If you're a part of it, if you're coming, anyone that wants to volunteer, please get with us. But please come see us Saturday. We are going to have the big confidence closet set up. You can come swap or shop, bring items for the confidence closet or take items, and it's all free. Today, come look at the confidence closet. There's pants, shoes, bags, all the fixins. Did you see that video? For the Nixons, I think is what I said. It makes no sense. Thank you for coming and spending time with us. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but you chose us this morning.
One last thing. Saturday at 1 o'clock is a celebration of life for Samantha Miner. We have kept it off social media. It is on our private page for family reasons. So if you need the information, I will post it on our page or just meet me. She is the woman who, what's the name of her Saturday market that
Devoted
to her. She wrote an amazing book that I just finished. She ran the market the second year that it was in existence. She's inspired and touched a lot of us. She's amazing.
Member of our group.
She's a member of our group.
And
she joined our group.
Not too long ago.
She joined our group. She isn't a member. So there's a celebration of life. 1 o'clock Saturday. I do have the Dory, Jessica, we all have the information somewhere. And I am going to post it on the page.
Also, Wendy Bergen asked if we could collect something to donate to the family. I contacted Letitia, who's in close contact with the family. They are doing Cash App and things like that, but they said if the group wants to do something, as in if we all want to Cash App me or Lou and do Wendy asked that it be for food. So if we can do like a Publix gift card, like all of us get together for a Publix gift card or Walmart gift card, I would prefer somewhere where the money will stretch further. And which I feel like is like, I don't know, Aldi, Walmart, then we can all do that and we can give that to them Saturday for the family. again, to help with food. She had 7 kids, 7, right?
2 at home.
And 2 at home. So we really want to do something that'll impact, have the biggest impact we can. All right, that's it. Yes, Monica.
Our lady that does the color analysis and I are planning a fashion show with the Bungalow Boutique on the 23rd, and we would love for everybody to come and join us. We have not determined the time yet, but
You'll post it on the page.
Yeah, we'll post
Yes.
it on the page.
Perfect.
Dawn and Monica,
Yes.
which are members, you're hosting a fashion show. What day?
The 23rd of July.
Awesome. July 23rd. So June 25th is our floating sound bath
At my house.
in Lou's Pool again. We're just having the parties at Lou's Pool.
Why not?
With
As Patsy said, have the party. Don't wait for the construction to be done because I got big plans.
3 tickets left. So Lupita Alvarez, if you've ever met her, she's fantastic. She's doing the sound bath and you float on a mattress. It is so relaxing. It really helps people. So we have 3 tickets left for in the pool, and there's options for outside of the pool. All right.
Okay.
If anybody fell in love with anything on the bagel bar over here, I do have product available for sale today, or you can take my business card and place an order on my website.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. Come shop the closet. Everything's free.